the bet that changed everything. It was a typical night at the dorm, filled with laughter, banter, and a friendly game of cards. Matt and his best friend Josh had been playing for hours, their stakes growing higher with every round. The game had started off lighthearted, but as the tension increased, so did the risks. Finally, after an intense series of rounds, Matt found himself at the losing end.
All right, man.
You lost fair and square, Josh grinned, knowing exactly what kind of punishment Matt would dread most. I dare you to go to the Miller's Gala this weekend, dressed as a woman. Full on. Makeup, dress, heels, the whole thing. Matt's face turned pale. He had heard of the gala before, an exclusive charity event known for its wealthy, influential guests. The thought of showing up in a dress was already humiliating, but knowing that everyone would be watching made it worse. Still, he couldn't back down from a bet. You're on, Matt said, determined not to back out despite the dread that bubbled up in his stomach. Over the next few days, Matt's nerves began to eat away at him. The more he thought about it, the more ridiculous the dare seemed. But Josh, ever the instigator, took it to a whole new level. You better not back out, Matt. I'll remind you about this for the rest of your life if you do. The day of the gala arrived, and Matt found himself at the mercy of a makeover session at a local salon. He didn't know the first thing about makeup or how to style his hair, but with the help of a team of experts, he was soon transformed into a version of himself he didn't recognize. His usual laid-back, athletic look was replaced by a sleek dress, towering heels, and flawless makeup. When he caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror, Matt couldn't help but laugh nervously. He felt exposed, vulnerable. This is insane, he muttered, adjusting the straps of the dress and trying to stand tall in the uncomfortable heels. Josh, clearly enjoying Matt's discomfort, gave him a thumbs up. You look great, buddy. This is going to be so much fun. They arrived at the gala, and as soon as they stepped out of the car, Matt's heart began to race. The glittering lights of the venue and the elegant crowd of wealthy, well-dressed guests were enough to make anyone feel out of place. But Matt had no choice now but to walk into the grand hall, with Josh beside him, trying his best not to burst into laughter. As they entered, heads turned. Matt could feel the stares of the crowd, and for the first time in his life, he felt truly self-conscious. Women scrutinized his every movement, while the men tried to hide their amusement. He did his best to smile and walk with confidence, but inside, he felt like he was collapsing under the pressure. Then, something strange began to happen. As the night wore on, Matt's discomfort started to fade. He caught glimpses of women around the room, how they carried themselves, how they were constantly observed, expected to be perfect, yet still maintain an air of elegance. He started to pay attention to the subtle nuances, the way people interacted with the women in the room, the questions they asked, the compliments they gave. It was a world he had never considered before, one that was far more complicated than he had imagined. The more he observed, the more he started to empathize with the women around him. Their grace was not just in their appearance, but in how they navigated their social world. Their constant battle to be taken seriously, to not be reduced to their looks, yet always expected to look their best. It was a realization that both humbled and enraged him. By the time they reached the main event, an auction for a children's charity, Matt was starting to feel like he understood something new. He realized that the way people viewed him wasn't just about his appearance. It was a reflection of their assumptions about who he was, based solely on how he looked. He had to play along, act the part, even though he didn't quite fit in. As the night progressed, Matt grew more comfortable in his new persona. He found that people treated him differently, with a mix of curiosity and admiration. Women started to compliment him on his dress and makeup, asking where he got his look. Men, on the other hand, were overly polite, speaking to him as if he were something fragile, something they needed to protect. At one point during the night, Matt had to leave the crowd and head to the bathroom. As he passed by a group of women talking, one of them whispered, "I wonder if he knows what it's really like to walk in our shoes." Those words hit him harder than he expected. He paused in the hallway, looking at his reflection in the window. For the first time, he thought about the expectations placed on women, about the constant balancing act between confidence and caution. He realized that wearing a dress was the least of it. The real challenge was navigating a world where appearances and actions were constantly judged, where the smallest mistake could lead to ridicule, and where being true to oneself often meant sacrificing comfort or safety. When Matt returned to the main event, he saw a group of women discussing business, debating, and making decisions with the same authority as any man in the room. He felt a sudden admiration for them. They didn't just survive in this world, they thrived in it, despite the challenges they faced. As the evening drew to a close, Josh gave Matt a knowing look. "So, how's the view from the other side?" Matt smiled, a little more confidently than he had at the start of the night. "It's a lot more complicated than I thought." He had come to realize that the game wasn't just about him losing a bet. It was about learning to see the world through different eyes, to challenge his own assumptions, and to understand the invisible barriers that women faced daily. The experience had transformed him. He walked out of the gala, no longer feeling like the joke of the evening, but as someone who had seen a side of life he never truly understood before.